So it wasn't the first vid I was planning on doing tonight, but I came across this on Facebook from STV News. Scotland doesn't have a natural resilience to wildfires it once had. Now, there was a time that you used to have journalists, actual journalists, that would question everything they were told and research and look into the background. That's what journalism was about. Now we have activists who sell whatever they're told to repeat, to others, basically. Yeah. And it's interesting, some of the comments, like, well, if only we had lived in a country where it rained a lot. Well, that's Scotland. It's arson, not wildfires. Absolutely. Yeah. It's well investigated and documented that 90% of wildfires are caused by human activity. When I grew up in the south side of Glasgow, nearby farmers used to set controlled fires during dry, warm spells. All of that used to be common sense. You had these things called fire breaks, all the rest of it. None of it was rocket science. It was known through, well, historical experience and the embracement of common sense. But common sense has long, well, left the building. So the actual STV News article, Scotland doesn't have the natural resilience to wildfires that it once had, Minister has warned following a spate of devastating blazes in recent months. The warning comes after the Scottish Government hosted a special wildfire summit on Tuesday to discuss how it will manage blazes going forward. Over the past year, Scotland has suffered the largest wildfires in living memory, with Dava in the Highlands enduring the worst damage as an area the size of 10,000 football pitches was devastated by the blaze. In total, and this is interesting, numerology here wise, the government said 13, of course it is, not 12, not 14, 13 wildfires were issued this year alone, and firefighters attended more than 200 blazes. It goes on to say, we need people to understand we're in a different climate now, Agriculture Minister Jim Farley said. And I've said over the years, look, we're getting colder, not bloody warmer, yeah? I mean, we had a reasonable summer this year, but it doesn't even come close to summers like 76, of which I'm old enough to remember as a child. Seriously. And in Scotland, because we have so much bloody water, and for good reason, God's own country. I mean, I've said for years, you look at Loch Ness, there is more fresh water in that one loch alone than the whole of England and Wales combined. The whole of it. I would argue it's more than that. And we have lots of lochs in Scotland. The English call them lakes, and for good reason. But in Scotland we call them lochs. Yeah? But yeah, so we don't have the natural resilience to wildfire that we used to have, and people should really be mindful, and that's part of the programming, mindfulness, yeah, neuro-linguistic programming, before setting fire anywhere in the country, whether it's campfires, barbecues, or whatever, because that spark could land 500 meters away and suddenly you have a wildfire on your hands. But this ties into the ongoing rollout of Agenda 21. Yeah? Places where humanity used to live before will no longer be the case. And they'll come up with various reasons. Yeah? But we used to have this in the bag. Yeah? Creating fire breaks. As farmers would do. They would burn certain grasses and whatever else over certain areas because they had the skill and the knowledge to know that this would prevent further damage. None of this should be rocket science. Yeah, none of it. But it's all about the narrative. Because I can assure you, pretty much most of these fires have been started deliberately. That's what you found in America. That's what you found in, Los Angeles and all the rest of it. Yeah. The common denominator is activists pushing agendas. And occasionally one or two of them gets caught. Anyway, I'll leave you a link to this. I'll leave you a link to the article. I'll also leave you a link to something. Oh my, I was surprised at how many years plus this came out. And according to this one, 14. Yeah, probably at least that. And it was called What in the World Are They Spraying? Now, at some point from memory, and I probably haven't watched it since it came out, but we're pointing out the obvious about, well, if you're chemtrailing the skies with aluminium particulates and you look at it as a combustible material, especially when it comes to in relation to things like, well, wood, anywhere where you've got aluminium particulates and like I think in this they checked levels of aluminium in the water and they were just off the scale through the roof. Yeah. There's a detail to what's going on that most people are blissfully unaware of. And when you think, even going back to the aluminium particulates that they're spraying in these chemtrailing sessions going on daily, aluminium in the brain. We've never had incidences of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and various other neurological disorders. And then add to that fluoride and how it bonds with aluminium in the brain, etc., etc. None of this should be rocket science. I used to, and I have done for God knows how long. The main sense I'm like, how on board do you actually think you are when you're breathing the same air as the rest of us? Yeah. Anyway, share if you care, give it a thumb up. Do me the honour of subscribing, and I'll speak to you soon.